We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. Hey, BraveCo men. This week, I have my beautiful wife with me, Lauren. Baby, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
We're going to talk about marriage, and we haven't talked about marriage in a while in the podcast, and we often talk to guys about how to build stronger, like happier lives themselves, talk about raising kids a little bit, but you are always a hit when we have you on. And so
thanks.
Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Now, when I think about what makes a healthy marriage, I go back and I look at my parents. Like mom and dad, for me, are some of the people that I look at and go, they had a really healthy marriage. And a lot of it is because, well, mom and dad came from an era where people made marriage work.
That's true.
And nowadays, culture has shifted its message to around marriage and divorce and connection. And so I think a lot of people growing up today have this idea about marriage that it doesn't have to work, that if you find the right person that makes you happy, that's kind of the key to success in marriage. But when I look at my parents' age and your parents' age, right, they're almost the same. Like your mom and dad have a happy marriage, not because they found the right people to make marriage work, right? Like they found the right person. Like your mom and dad, have watched them over the years work hard at their marriage.
Oh yeah, and they choose. It's not an option. Like opting out isn't an option. My dad and my parents have the same toaster they've had since they've been married.
Okay, that's a funny point because it's true. Your dad keeps fixing
he fixes
the
it.
Yeah,
he doesn't throw it out or get a new one. He fixes it because he knows how, which is amazing. Because you could go and we tell him like you could go to Walmart, Dad, and you could buy a better toaster for like I don't know $19.99 potentially.
It's true,
but that's like beside the point for him.
Yeah.
It's when it works, there's no use in throwing it out.
Yeah. I think
and when it doesn't work, you fix it.
It's true. Part of my point is when young people are looking at marriage right now, and this is just my opinion, is that a lot of young people are looking at marriage and going, I don't know that I want that because it seems really complicated. And a lot of what I've seen growing up has not been super successful.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of men out there that inside of themselves, like deep down want a happy, healthy marriage, but don't want all the conflict and the struggle that they've seen. And then I think the other side is we're looking at a culture who honestly, there's just not a lot of positive peer pressure to do it really well.
That's true.
There's a lot of positive peer pressure to just find what you want and find the right person that fits and to do all this stuff. So anyways,
I agree.
We have a completely different view on marriage, which is there is no one perfect person. And there's a bunch of healthy ways to create a healthy, strong marriage. And so I want to dive into some of those today.
Yeah, it's really good. We so we're teaching an 8-week marriage intensive at the moment. So we are talking a lot about marriage in the season. And what you just said reminds me of what we were talking about the other day, which is I think it's easy sometimes to think about a happy, thriving marriage as some emotional state to arrive at.
Yeah.
But what is impressing me more and more as we go, we're almost 12 years married, and even as we're kind of studying and learning about healthy marriage in order to teach about healthy marriage, I feel like what I'm discovering over and over again is that a happy, thriving marriage is just a bunch of things that you do or don't do or undo or read. It's just actually a bunch of actions that when you do the right things, A plus B actually does equal C. And it isn't about arriving at some ethereal state where you just so enjoy your spouse all the time, or you just experience all of these positive emotions and the negative ones are less and less as you get. Like, that isn't it at all. It actually has a lot to do with the actions you take, the steps, the practical things that you do inside of your day-to-day life that contribute to a connection and a bond with your spouse.
Why I love that so much is because you take chance out of it. And you take this like, oh, we just have this thing. Like they just have this thing that they're so lucky that they found the person that they have that thing with.
Yeah.
But you're so right. Like, relationships are as much a math equation as they are almost anything else. And we've used this analogy a lot. Like, marriage is an empty box and you can only pull out of it what you put in. And I love this analogy so much. That's why I use it a lot, is because when you really think about it, right? Like, if you inventory exactly what I put into that box. And when I say exactly, I mean it. Like, what is your past? When you drop your past in there, is your past full of hope? Is it full of life and redemption? Right? Or is it full of death, regret, destruction, like things that you haven't reconciled?
Yeah.
So everybody's got a past. So when you drop that into your marriage or into that bucket, like, what is that? And your communication skills, are your communication skills the same as when you were in high school? Or have you done any work in that area of your life and you drop that in? And I like to think through, one of the things that we do with BraveCo in our discipleship program is lesson 6 is what's in your backpack. And so we talk all about making them inventory. What are the things that are weighing you down, and as far as work and life, and this is kind of one of those things where it forces you to actually look at, what am I bringing to my relationships, not just my marriage, but what am I bringing to my relationships? And then based upon that, right? Like, based upon that, you can kind of weigh everything out and go like, well, I haven't read a like communications book in my whole life. Well, it's no wonder that you're suffering. And I haven't built strong relationships in my life, you know? So to me, I love to look at the box, like what is actually in the box. But we know that there's some key things that people have to hit on in order to really thrive in their marriage. And so what are what's like a top, like, number one thing in your mind that you'd go, this right here, like, you got to nail this in order to feel really successful?
I think the list is long. Like, the list of things to get good at, the skills to hone, that's pretty long, but luckily you've got a lifetime together to figure that out. I think if you had to go for, like, what is the top category, I do feel like conflict resolution skills are probably the most important skill set to sharpen early in marriage, because the nature of marriage is that you have two completely different people who have committed their lives together. And the chances that you were raised the same way with the same skill sets and the same DNA, very low chances that you were raised super similarly in a lot of different areas. And so the opportunity to come up on conflict, the opportunity to rub up against each other in a way that is uncomfortable or that pushes each other's buttons. I mean, that's just going to happen week 1. You're going to get home from your honeymoon. Maybe you even had one of those horrible honeymoon fights like we had. I mean, it just doesn't take long before two very opposite people.
What happened on our honeymoon?
Create conflict. Well, on our honeymoon, we went to Hawaii and we decided, like morons, to go to a timeshare meeting.
Can I just clarify for a second? Because we were just trying to be really frugal. We didn't have money. We had no money. So we were thinking like, how do we get those Hawaiian?
We were trying to get freebies.
How do we get Hawaiian luau tickets?
They sucked us in like morons. We said yes to the timeshare meeting. And I'm like, I can sit through and whatever. I'll play this game. We can sit there all day long. I'll nod my head. I'll decline. Thank you very much. Not Jason Vallotton. We get into that timeshare meeting and he starts feeling manipulated by the guy whose job it is to sell us a timeshare. And Jason starts feeling pushed in a corner and criticized. And then he starts getting defensive like some sort of bear who's being attacked.
It's so true.
And all of a sudden he starts trying to make the timeshare salesman feel about this big.
Which I did.
And I'm so embarrassed. I want to crawl under my chair or run away.
I feel like I need to just shed a little bit of light because it
was the most embarrassing moment in our marriage. What happened.
Oh, it was because we hadn't been married for longer than 3 days. So it was the most embarrassing moment in our marriage.
Maybe still to this day.
Nah, I mean,
I'm not joking. Listen, he's a better human than when we first got married. He really tried to punish that guy.
That guy's a better human too. So this guy, we sit down, we do this timeshare, right? We do this, we're in the middle of this meeting and we tell the guy, because he asks us like, hey, are you just here for the tickets? Yeah, we're just here for the tickets. Like, we don't have any money.
Yeah, but this is how timeshare meetings go.
This guy's a savage.
He's doing his job.
Yeah, he's a real shark. So if you look up shark, you'll see this guy's face in there. He's like a throwback, Tom Selleck's ugly son.
Going. Yeah. We're talking about marriage.
So but here's what happens, right? This guy starts shaming me. I tell him like, we don't have any money. I feel really vulnerable when I tell him that. Like, I don't have any money, you know? I'm here with my new wife. Like, I had to borrow money from my dad just to be here.
We also already have 3 kids, so it's a hot mess.
Yeah. And then he starts shaming me, babe. He started saying,
I was there.
Good parents take their kids on vacation. Like, he stares right at me and says,
that's true.
Good parents take their kids on vacation. Good parents make time for the kids.
So I'm kicking Jason under the table.
You were pinching me.
Because you had lost your salvation.
Babe,
in that moment.
Here's the thing. I had just gone through a divorce. My kids are in tons of pain. And he's telling me what good dads do.
Good dads buy timeshares. And good dads take their kids on vacation.
What an ass.
Well, anyways, it wasn't a great moment. So we were on our honeymoon. And we got into this enormous fight because I'm thinking to myself, I have just married somebody who under pressure cracks and becomes some sort of horrible person. This is so embarrassing. I'm terrified. What is this going to look like?
A champ.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Compared to what I was feeling on the inside, I wanted to kill him.
Here's the point.
And instead, I just used words.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Punish him. To make him feel so small.
So small. Okay,
so the whole point of this story that I'd like to forget, actually it's really funny to remember, is that it just doesn't take long for 2 people to find themselves in conflict. So I think that good conflict resolution skills, which ours have gotten so much better over the years. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I had to pinch you under the table.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. So at least. So I do think this is probably the most important area. And one of the things that we teach often is this concept that conflict in and of itself isn't what tears marriages apart. Every marriage, healthy marriages are going to have conflict. If you have conflict, it means that 2 different people are showing up. You want to make sure you're both showing up in your marriage. You want to be free to be fully yourself in your marriage, which means bringing your needs, bringing your desires, bringing your perspectives and your opinions. So conflict is bound to happen. It's not the conflict in and of itself that tears marriages apart. It's your behavior inside of conflict.
Which is so key.
Yeah. There's a whole way to participate in conflict that actually leads to connection on the other side.
I love that because, well, one of the tips, and I'm just going to give a tip and you can give a couple if you want, but one of the tips to doing conflict well is just simply starting well. Mm-hmm. And the Gottman Institute, John Gottman, they did a bunch of studies on this. Like he said, I've spent 30 years, I've dedicated my whole entire life to studying love and marriage and what makes marriage work. And so he says with 86% accuracy, if you start a conversation well, sorry. How you start a conversation will decide how it ends with 86% accuracy. So he goes like, hey, listen, do a soft startup. And so what I always tell people is like, however you want the conversation to end, start that way. So if we were in a conflict or if I was going to have a hard conversation with you, I would think through like, how do I want her to feel at the end of this? Mm-hmm. And then I would start with like, babe, I want to talk through what happened last night, but I want you to feel cared for and known and seen in this.
Yeah.
And I ultimately want this to be helpful for us. Can I just share a little bit about mm-hmm. what's going on inside of me? Like the thing about doing conflict bad is that if you don't know how to resolve conflict, the truth is like you pile conflict on top of conflict. And so it's like, we have a conflict about whatever, maybe how I talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. And I'm using it as an example, how I talk to somebody. Yeah. And really we're just trying to solve that. Yeah. But then if I don't handle you well in the conflict, it creates another conflict, doesn't it?
Right.
It's like, yes. And you don't think about that a lot, but it's like, man, we just started talking about my interaction with that guy and how that made you feel. But now we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about how I'm making you feel right now.
Yeah.
And it becomes this thing that feels very unsolvable. Yes. It's like 20 minutes later, you're in the middle of this conflict and you can't even remember what started it.
Totally.
Because we're no longer talking about the very first thing. We're talking about these conflict on top of conflict on top of conflict. And so, yeah, conflict resolution is massive to making any relationship work. And I think here's the thing that I think people need to understand is that you're going to do conflict for the rest of your life.
Yeah. In
work, close relationships, marriage, with your kids. So if you invest, right, like reading the boundaries books are one really good way to invest in yourself. You want to think like, okay, what's one way that I can put 20 hours of work in and literally get that back? Mm-hmm. The boundaries book.
Yeah.
Go start to read the boundaries book, learn how to communicate, learn how to set healthy boundaries. Yeah. And you'll get all that time back later because you're not feeling powerless in the middle of these conflicts. Yeah. You're feeling so powerful. And then the other thing too that happens is if you don't have good skills, then you have tons of anxiety when you're in the middle of conflict.
Right.
And what happens when you have anxiety is you can't think.
Yeah.
You actually you can't put together real thoughts. You can't hear anybody. You're having a very hard time. And so growing your skill set helps you not just to do conflict better, but to really communicate what you're trying to get across.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
And I think that's really helpful.
It is.
To me,
say one thing
yeah, go
quick?
for it.
So as you're talking, I'm realizing I do think that a solid skill set for conflict resolution is huge. I would say back up even further though, and potentially, I just think that the mindset that the goal of marriage is actually to protect your connection is maybe even the more primary, important framework to even have in marriage. Because when you understand that protecting your connection is your ultimate goal, you behave a lot differently in communication. You behave a lot differently in conflict. And I think that is potentially a mindset that is not common for everyone. And when we say that protecting your connection is the ultimate goal of marriage, maybe we should unpack that for a second. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, it's your target. It's whatever your goal is, that is going to decide everything that you're pointing at. And to make the point clear, like a lot of people have peace as their goal in marriage, especially like a couple years in. You're like, man, this is a lot of turmoil. I'm coming home to a lot of turmoil. I just want to keep the peace.
Peace is the goal.
And so, but what happens is you create a lot of avoidance inside of marriage because I'm not going to have this tough conversation with you. Like, how many times do I want to have a tough conversation at night? Right. I'm already tired from work. Well, the challenge is if I don't have that tough conversation, yeah, I have peace, but what's the trade-off for peace? Real connection. Mm-hmm. So we're creating roommates out of our marriage. I don't really feel like I feel like I'm living with somebody. I don't feel like I know somebody and somebody knows me. And over time, we just drift apart because our goal was peace. It wasn't really connection.
Yeah.
Or you make your goal financial gain and everything's driving towards how do we
set ourselves up financially,
build wealth? Well, and then you end up, everything in the marriage sacrifices so that we can build wealth. Again, your roommates, right? Like your roommates with benefits of wealth, but you don't have anything else. And I see that happen a lot. The actual one, with businessmen and women is the goal becomes these assets, these things that they can attain, but here's the sacrifice. It's like, go to work, keep building, stay at work late. Don't super participate with the kids at home. Like, I got it, stay there. And then they build and acquire wealth, but we don't actually feel like a real family.
Yeah.
So the goal of being connected, it drives everything that we do. It means I come home. I mean, this happened.
We're saying emotionally connected.
Yeah. Emotionally connected.
Yeah.
Like the other night, we had a conflict in the living room. The kids had just gotten to bed. I believe it was like 7 o'clock. And we were both so looking forward to connection and to watching our shows and hanging out. And then boom, the night shifted. Like in a moment, all of a sudden you're super frustrated at me and ready to like break glass, quote unquote, break glass. And I was like, wow. And so for a little bit of time, you said, "Hey, I don't think I'm able to communicate about, like, I can't have a conversation about this right now. I'm really frustrated." And I was like, "No worries. Yeah, have some time." But I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, if we don't solve this, if this is just going to carry on tomorrow and the next, like, time is not going to fix this.
Yeah.
Time's not going to bring us back together. And so on this particular one, I circled back around and I said, "Hey, I was like to talk about this a little bit." And you're like, "I still don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I can do this." And I thought for a little bit, okay. But because again, I want to feel connected. I want to feel close. I actually don't want to do this conversation with you. All I wanted to do was lay in bed and watch my show. And all you want to do is
go to sleep.
And now it's like 8:45 at night. We both feel really sad because we blew up the night, but then starting soft. So I started really, really soft and opened up that conversation. We both slowly moved towards each other in the conversation little by little. And we ended that night super successfully. That would have been a really easy night for you and for me just to go like, we're going to tackle this tomorrow or the next day or the next day.
Yeah. Tomorrow happened to be Mother's Day. So that would have been a bummer.
For you.
That'd have
been a real bummer for you. No.
I know. I'm glad that you forced us to repair.
But to me, it's the proof's in the pudding, right? Like we have both verbally stated our goal in marriage is connection.
Right.
It's not comfort. It's not peace. It's not feeling good. It's connection. And so on those hard nights, that's what pushes one of us to initiate this conversation. And because we teach this all the time, I had the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
Even though you're like, "I think I'm too tired," I had the skill set to start so soft that you were like, "I'm willing to do that and come in until we repaired."
Yep.
So yeah, I think making your goal connection, it's the rudder. It changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Beyond that, I do think communication skills, conflict resolution skills, those are probably the top.
Yeah, I would agree. I think to a big part, and we talked about this in the beginning, but I think a lot of people feel really powerless in marriage because they're not just dealing with what's happening in their marriage. They're dealing a lot with what's happening outside of their life. And what I mean by that is their past or their works. Mostly, honestly, it's a lot of ego stuff. So it's like, I don't feel very confident as a man. I'm dealing with a lot of shame. I'm dealing with my past trauma. And I think this is a bigger issue than what we talk about and what people realize, because if you're struggling with your past trauma, okay, well, that changes the lens on how you see everything in life. And like I'll use this as an example. When we first got married, I was in a nervous breakdown. And had you known how bad it was, which I didn't hide it from you, maybe you would or wouldn't have married me. But
yeah,
it's true.
I don't think I realized what was happening.
No. And I didn't realize how bad it was. I mean, it was just doing life. But my past and current situation, that's something that cost you inside of the marriage. Like I spent 5 years, really probably 5 intense years, working through anxiety while we were doing life together. My anxiety had nothing to do with our marriage.
Right.
It had nothing to do with what's going on inside of you and what's going on inside of me. And every human being on the planet is going to have some of that, right? Like everybody brings, like we talked about, that stuff into your box. Here's my point. My point is that my anxiety would have taken over our marriage had I not gone, I'm going to seek outside help until I solve this.
Right. Absolutely.
So that was always a potential for a disaster in our marriage. And those things, right? Like your past, especially those like past trauma that you're really dealing with, that feels really real in your marriage. Okay. That has nothing to do with your marriage. It was there before anyone ever was introduced.
Yeah.
It's always a threat because it has the potential to destroy this thing that you love the most if you don't actually stop and create a plan for that.
Yeah.
And for me, like that was one of the biggest things is instead of looping it into our marriage because I don't solve it, I have to, like, we both agree, this is right here, this is my problem. I have to figure out how to keep this thing that wasn't in our marriage before outside of our marriage and just secluded to something I'm working on and you're a part of, you're a partner with me in it, but it's not crushing you.
Yeah.
And that's a big challenge.
Yeah, it is.
But that's the help of actually sitting down and going through like, what's mine, what's ours, what's yours, what is it that I really have to work at that's keeping me from being really present in this marriage? Cause like my anxiety, I always wanted to escape. When pressure would come, I want to bounce out and go fishing a bunch. And we've talked about that a ton, you and I, but that pressure to medicate my anxiety is putting tons of pressure on our marriage.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out like, okay, what am I actually going to do? Who's going to be the person in my life that helps me solve this?
Yeah.
I think about it because the other day we were counseling a couple and they were talking about their marriage and talking about like, man, so much stuff is really hard in our marriage right now. And one of the things that I did was I got up and I just drew these boxes on the whiteboard and I said, hey, let's put everything into a category so that you can clearly look at what are the different things in your marriage that are causing so much pain. Yeah. And whatever, you have your past, and then do we have a real solution to each one of these? And it to me, it's a real simple way to uncomplicate the mess that marriage can be sometimes, is to make it really simple. And then you can categorize those things really easily by going, okay, what's the most important thing, right? Like what's the most important thing that you work through? And for him, it was my past. I have to address some of these triggers that are happening because of a current situation, but I'm also being triggered from the past. And so I need a tool today to help me work through this because it's bleeding into every area of my life.
Right.
And I see that a lot with BraveCo, like the men who are in our discipleship program, they start to be able to pull apart what's really happening. She's actually not the problem.
Right.
My kids aren't really the problem. The problem is I have this big piece right here, or I'm missing this tool right here. I'm missing this thing that's keeping me from being really successful in marriage right now.
Yeah, I think so. I do feel like it's human nature to get overwhelmed by something that you feel powerless in.
Yeah.
And so I think anything that you can do in your marriage to get your power back, in the sense of, as an individual, the areas of my life where I either feel out of control or I'm confused, or I've been going around the mountain in this area over and over and over again. I can't seem to get breakthrough. Actually pinpointing those areas of life and creating a plan for them, I do think that in and of itself brings anxiety way down, because as soon as you start to get momentum, as soon as you start to know it's possible to get breakthrough in a certain area, all the other areas all of a sudden don't feel quite as overwhelming.
Yeah.
And like you said, I do think that the boxes were helpful, because sometimes your marriage can feel like a tangled up mess. And in reality, it's just three things. And it's like three different pieces of string that got all knotted up and intertwined and confused. And so it is a big knot. But actually, if you pull it apart, it's just three strings. It's just three things that just created a mess. And so I think that when in marriage, I mean, obviously it's for a lifetime. And so it can be very overwhelming to think about doing something very hard forever.
Yeah.
And that can be really demotivating. And it can be really depressing, honestly, to think about doing something hard for a really, really long time. Nobody wants to do that. So I do think the faster that you can find yourself in a place of feeling powerful over one or two or three of those areas that are hard, the better.
Yeah, it's true. To me, like, maybe the last tip that we'll give that makes marriage work is making sure that you are investing into your partner's emotional bank account. And why I love this one so much is, I used this analogy the other day. Like, imagine that you could just go grab money and put it into your bank account and it didn't cost you anything, right? It didn't cost you a ton. You could just, like, the only factor was you had to go get it and go put it in your bank account. Like, I think about that a lot when it comes to our marriage. Is I can make your day right now. It literally only costs me a thoughtful text. I can make your evening better. All it costs me is being intentional. Like, I don't have to go build something. I don't have to go buy something. I don't have to go create something, really. I just have to go, how do I want to make her know that I care about her, that I love her? And it's like turning towards you. And you don't think that goes a long ways, but again, back to John Gottman, which he's my favorite guy on marriage, so people can tell, is that he says it takes 5 positives to make up for 1 negative in marriage. And couples that have a 5-to-1 ratio, which nobody's sitting there going, 5, I've only done 3 today, I need to do 2 more. Yeah. Or we had 2 negatives last night, I need to do whatever.
Yeah.
No one's doing that. But if you sit and you think about your life, you're like, well, here's the question. How intentional am I at investing life, investing
encouragement.
hope, encouragement into our emotional bank account?
Yeah.
Most people, before you're married and you're dating, it comes naturally. Actually, it's like this instinctive thing that we do. Like, I am constantly trying to invest into you because I'm trying to convince you that I'm a good partner. If you marry me, this is what you're going to get. And it's like this primal thing that's wired into us. We're at the top of our game. I'm writing love notes. I'm so motivated by this idea that, I got to convince you to stay with me forever. We get married and I have your commitment, and now my focus is on everything else. And I forget that, well, we're going to be making massive withdrawals. We're constantly making massive withdrawals in marriage. When I come home at night and the kids, it's not the best time. Every night when I come home, it's not the best time to be home. The kids are
hungry,
they're
tired.
They're all the things.
At their best.
Yeah. They've been bored for, whatever. They need entertainment. So we got young kids. That's a withdrawal. I'm withdrawing. And we're going to do a little bit of conflict. Just all the details. You got to pay bills. You got to deal with all the stuff. If I haven't made those investments in you, those intentional investments in you, we're back to roommates. We're back to just feeling like, man, I don't know that I really want to come home. I don't have somebody that I feel really fond about, but that's my fault.
Yeah.
And learning how to turn towards one another, honestly, is something that every couple can do. And it creates like a ton of momentum in the relationship.
Yeah.
You want to add anything to that?
Well, I just think probably the mistake that a lot of people make, I think the mistakes that we have made is potentially waiting until you feel like doing those kinds of things in order to do them. And I think circumstantially, life is hard. I mean, honestly, I think if you've lived long enough, you know, there are circumstances way beyond your control that come and threaten the peace inside of your home, the connection inside of your home. There's plenty of hard things that you're going to have to deal with. And it's very hard to control outside impact. I mean, honestly, there's just a lot that happens inside of a marriage, inside of a family, inside of life. And so I think if you wait until you feel like communicating fondness or appreciation or encouragement, if you wait till you feel fond towards your partner to tell them how much they mean to you, you're not going to do it very often because you're going to be overwhelmed because life is hard. The way that hardship isn't as hard is when you have strong bond and connection with your partner in life. That is how you weather the storms of life, is inside of this covenant relationship. So the best thing you could do is to pour those investment moments into the emotional bank account, whether you feel like doing it or not, because when the storm of life comes, you've got something in your account to draw from. Whether the storm is, I mean, the luxury in life is that the storm would be the hungry, tired toddler at your ankles.
Right.
Obviously, that's not the worst thing that could happen in a day. And so
it feels
on
like
a good day, your toddler's screaming. On a bad day, you've got this diagnosis you're dealing with, or you've got this financial, crisis in your business, or you've, Life is hard. And I think that in general, and this is a little bit of what I was referring to at the very beginning of our conversation, is just this, wow, actually a healthy, thriving marriage is A plus B equals C. You can actually take these really proactive, really practical steps to invest in the connection that you will then enjoy. I was thinking about the box that you described, the empty box. I'm like, yeah, some people are throwing their past into that empty box and hoping that they pull out something happy, and there's nothing to pull out that's happy. It's just a box full of past trauma. Or there's other really simple things, like maybe you're not the kind of person that replaces the toilet paper when it runs out.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that over and over again, you're not going to pull out like a thankful spouse. You're going to pull out this like resentment, because this very simple thing that you could do almost with zero energy, replace the toilet paper roll, is become an annoyance or a one of those grating rubs that happens inside of a marriage. And you don't need to do that. You could just replace the toilet paper. Like, be the person that replaces the toilet paper, and you'll have a happier life. It's really that. So if you get super tiny and practical with it, my point in saying that is sometimes it's not these huge things. It's the little stuff over and over and over again. It's the choosing to turn towards instead of to self-preserve. It's the choosing to reach out instead of be selfish in a moment. Like, I don't want to replace the toilet paper roll. She'll do it later. Those little things over and over and over can communicate so much. They can make such a pillow in your emotional bank account, so that when real hard stuff actually happens, you can do it together. You can get through it.
Yeah. I mean, the really big things are honestly so much easier to do. Take the family on vacation, no problem. It just barely moves the needle.
Not going to move the needle.
It doesn't, no. I get excited about thinking through, man, how can I build my marriage stronger? How can I invest in it? How can I grow it?
I get excited when you think about that too.
Yeah, it's an exciting thought. And honestly, it's one of the things I've enjoyed the most about BraveCo is watching guys do this with it's starting out with a marriage that's really suffering, starting out with, man, my wife and I are thinking about divorce. I have a couple of guys this year that I watched. They were at the brink of divorce. Yeah. And one guy, he listens to 20 minutes of something of BraveCo every day. So he's already graduated, and every single day he goes back and he listens 20 minutes.
So good.
Yeah. That's just that little thing that he does. Right.
Yeah.
And it reminds him like, oh yeah, go change the toilet paper. Oh yeah. Send my wife a kind message. Yeah. Oh yeah. Do these things. Marriage and life is so much about doing the small little things that you don't want to do, but that just raise that, that level, right? It raises that level of joy, happiness, competency. And at the end of the day, you look back and you go like, wow, I really enjoy my partner. I really enjoy my family. I really enjoy my kids because I have tools. I feel powerful. I don't feel powerless. I am in control. I'm planning, right? Like I'm ahead of the game and not behind the game. And I think one of the things we didn't mention, but all this stuff equals teamwork. I'm a good partner.
Yeah, huge.
And I think over the last 12 years, we say this more now than ever. Like we were cleaning up last night and you'd put the kids to bed or whatever. And I went behind you and I was cleaning. And I think when you came back in, I think I said like, babe, I'm your partner right now. Like I've got this. I'm thinking about what you're thinking about. I'm predicting what you're going to need when you come back in the room. I know what's going to make you feel joy, and I'm going to go beat you to that. You know, I'm going to be a good partner.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, like all of a sudden, you're going to have tough stuff. You're going to have tough stuff whether you're married or not.
Right.
You're going to have tough stuff because you're alive, but do you have someone that you get to do team with?
Yeah.
That's on your side, that's kicking butt, that's thinking about you, that's turning towards you. Like that's the excitement in life is I've got somebody who, man, when you get these skills and when you deal with some of the stuff in your past, like we get to spend the rest of our life together really enjoying this thing that we're doing, which is like God's greatest desire and design for mankind is that I would have you and the kids and our relationships to do the rest of my life with. Like, it's amazing.
I know. As you're talking, I'm like, I wish we had 3 hours to talk about this because I'm just sitting here realizing or thinking to myself, if people knew what marriage could be like, they would do whatever it took.
Yeah.
Because there isn't much more, there's not a more fulfilling experience than being connected to this person who has completely laid down their life for you. Yeah. And you get to actually enjoy the companionship that you really need in order to thrive in life. Like if people knew what it was like to really thrive in marriage, they would do whatever work it took. I think people don't do the work because they, don't know if it's possible. Yeah. They don't believe in themselves. They don't know how, obviously, which is, hello, BraveCo. Thank you for equipping a generation of men. But I just think, oh my goodness, if people knew what they could enjoy, they would do anything. And it is often the little things. Like you'd said, I think it was either last night or the night before, you said, thanks for cleaning up the kitchen. And I realized, oh, he's in there folding the laundry. Thanks for folding the laundry. These are like mind-blowing circumstances because for me to be thanked for cleaning the kitchen is relatively new, as in the last, I mean, this wasn't happening year one of our marriage.
No.
And me saying thank you for folding the laundry, that's relatively new. That definitely wasn't happening year one in our marriage. But where we've gotten to is this spot where we do know how to be a team, and you would happily put aside your desire to go out and shoot your bow in order to fold the laundry first, because the reward is so great, not the reward in that moment, the reward of enjoying your marriage, the reward of having a partner who likes you, the reward of having a companion that trusts you, that we have a trust and a respect and an enjoyment inside of our marriage that you can't get there without doing the dumb laundry or cleaning the kitchen. Like you would do whatever it took if you knew what thriving felt like.
Yeah.
It gets me very excited.
I love it because I think it's easier for a man if you're like, hey, what you have to do is you've got to climb that mountain. You've got to do it without any camping gear. And you got to go beat up the guy on the other side. Like I think a lot of guys are like, all right, if that's what it took to to like do marriage. I'll do that. Like I'll go climb that mountain and conquer that thing and beat up that guy. And instead it's like, you got to fold the laundry tonight.
Totally. Yeah.
You got to come home and look at your wife and go,
it's not sexy.
And go, I'm so thankful you're here tonight.
Yeah.
It's great to be with you. Like you got to do the small, tedious things that just layer upon layer upon layer. But
that's life. That's not just marriage either. I mean, whatever. We don't have time. But this is just how it works, guys.
And that's why I love having you on, babe, because we get to show like marriage is so worth it. We are 12 years in, and where we started, right, in that man's horrible office where he was shaming me to where we are at today.
Oh my goodness.
We have grown.
We have.
Guys, hopefully that was helpful for you. This week, the challenge, right, if you're married is to grow your marriage, right? It is I can't say that it's not science, because it is. This is rocket science. It's you doing the small little things today. Maybe you need to grow in your communication skills. Maybe you need to deal with something in the past, right? Get a counselor and go dig into some of that trauma, because it doesn't have anything to do with her. It has to do with you. You had it before you came in. Or maybe you need to set some reminders on your phone, which is how I started to learn. Yeah. Is I'd set reminders on my phone. It reminded me to turn towards you and be really intentional. So guys, have an incredible week. We will see you next week. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.